What's going on, everybody? So today I thought I'd make a top 10 reasons why I'm excited for the ROG Ally. And there's been a lot of back and forth between which is better, the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally, but I'm personally excited for the ROG Ally for specific reasons that are very different from the Steam Deck. So don't get too excited in the comments. It's a war between the two handhelds, but it's a very friendly war. And a healthy one, I think, would push both platforms to become better. So the first reason would be the fact that Windows PCs are just naturally able to dock and undock whenever you want. I've never had an issue with a gaming laptop docking to a television and undocking back into its screen. And the Ally docking is natural with Windows PCs being its base. Over the years, they pretty much perfected it with laptops and netbooks. There are the occasional glitches, but with the first week with the Steam Deck, sometimes docking caused straight up crashes, as if that wasn't a normal act with PC for a long time already. So yeah, I believe docking will be just a natural state for the ROG Ally and something we won't have to worry about. And the fact that there is a handheld and desktop mode in the Armoury Crate solidifies that idea and makes me worry less about that feature, while I still worry about it on the Steam Deck. Number two is the fact that there is going to be a very powerful CPU inside of the Ally with 8 cores and 16 threads, which means more opportunities for multitasking and just throwing whatever you want at it in the background. So that means third-party software, modding, and even putting some music on in the background. And if we were to compare the multitasking for the Ally potentially and the Steam Deck, I personally tried to listen to music with the Steam Deck for the first 8 months of having it, and the CPU always slowed down considerably. Running anything in the background just kills the processes for the Steam Deck's OS. I'm not sure if it's just Steam OS or the fact that Proton is doing its thing and causing the system to slow down even more, but I would be playing a game like Prototype and then decide to open up GameScope's dashboard to look at a screenshot or something like I used to do on the Nintendo Switch. And if I'm comparing the Steam Deck to something like the Nintendo Switch, I would take screenshots in the Nintendo Switch regularly because I was never able to access the screenshots as easily as I was on a system like the Nintendo Switch. So with the Steam Deck, I naturally tried the same thing, and usually when I try to open the media category, the system would either not display any images or just straight up crash the game and the entire system. And that was the first 8 months of owning this. So with the Ally, I'm naturally hopeful that it will be a lot easier to multitask since it is Windows and that OS is already established with a great multitasking feature. And with 16 threads to boot, there's going to be no competition in that region. Number 3 would be playing games at a higher fidelity. Even though right now, games like The Last of Us aren't quite supported on the Ally or the Steam Deck because that port is just not good, eventually and naturally we will see games working on the Ally like The Last of Us and Returnal with more driver and software updates coming in. And we haven't even reached the first official day of the Ally's release, so waiting for a potential update to hit at least day 1 is inevitable to fix these higher demanding games. And I'm hopeful that we will see a lot of these other games like Dead Space Remake work a lot better on the ROG Ally opposed to the Steam Deck. And I know a lot of people are comparing them out of fear, but I'm comparing them out of positivity. I think that the Steam Deck had a lot of growing to do on its first day, and it had a lot of shortcomings. But after a year, it's nearly a perfect product with some incompatibilities. But with the ROG Ally, with higher fidelity games, it's going to have less and less of a limit, especially after a year. Number 4, even though I think the Steam Deck will ultimately be a lot more convenient to access these features and specific titles, I think emulation will reach farther on the ROG Ally because it is naturally a Windows PC. We'll have about every type of emulator being greatly taken advantage of by the 8 cores and 16 threads of the Ally CPU. It's just a better CPU, which means you can run games like God of War 3, and you can run emulators naturally and natively like Xenia, playing classic games like the original 2008 Ninja Gaiden 2, instead of that lesser Master Collection port that we have on the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck. And you can natively play games like Red Dead Redemption, Project Dark, Project Gotham 3, and so many more classic Xbox 360 games that will eventually get supported on Windows first. Because I tried a lot of these titles on the Steam Deck and they either don't display or they run extremely slow at sub 30 FPS most of the time, like with Red Dead Redemption. And I personally think that this, for me, is the ROG Ally's secret weapon. Playing a game like the original Ninja Gaiden 2 on the go with a seemingly more stable stable Windows and interface is something I've been dreaming of since I was a kid. And as of 3 weeks ago, the 2008 Ninja Gaiden 2 works on Xenia. I've been playing it and I'm up to chapter 12 right now. And I'm a huge Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden fan, so specifically playing this game on a system as powerful as the Ally with a 1080p screen is something I'm most excited for. And number 5, speaking of the screen, the 1080p 7-inch screen will make everything look unbelievably good. And sure, we have the Deck HD mod screen with 1200p, but a lot of the games on Steam Deck cannot go up to 1080p. The most they can go up to with having stable frames, at least, is 900p. The Steam Deck is not meant to go to 1080p or above. So I'm not sure why that option is even there and why people are going to tear their Steam Deck apart just to put this in to say they have a better model than the ROG Ally is beyond me. But imagine playing an older title in ultra fidelity on the ROG Ally's 1080p screen. With its 95 and up % color accuracy, I believe the Ally will look better than a lot of other Windows handhelds. And it seems like it has VRR as well, which is, if you don't know, variable refresh rate. So when it comes to emulators like Xenia that support VRR to prevent tearing, it seems like the ROG Ally is going to be right at home with applications like that. And VRR makes everything so much more smoother, opposed to adjusting so many settings and refresh rates on the Steam Deck. Doing everything manually does get taxing and just wears you down after a while. And sure, the Switch has an OLED screen now, but having an OLED screen with 720p is like having a fountain pen with tracing paper. It's a misplaced luxury. Personally, the OLED highlights how low resolution the Switch games actually are. The Steam Deck at least had high fidelity games at true resolution for the most part, not just some kind of downscaling method running consistently with almost each and every game like the Nintendo Switch. And just to think, a smaller screen with VRR and crisp 1080p will probably look like 4K compared to those other screens. And personally, with the Steam Deck and its high fidelity graphics, when I put the graphics down to 460p, I can't really tell the difference between that resolution and 720p sometimes, depending on the game. Because for some reason, 720p just makes everything look blurry to the point of obscurity, and the Switch can vouch for that. But when you bring it up to 1080p, I feel like that resolution is the definitive way to display textures in your games. For instance, Resident Evil 2 Remake is made for a 1080p screen. When you put it lower than that, everything just looks blurry and obscured. When you put it lower than 720p, it still looks almost the same amount of obscured, but you can't really quite tell the difference too much after you go lower than 1080p. So yeah, every once in a while, bringing the resolution up to 1080p and having that option naturally be on the ROG Ally, with its screen being proprietary to the software that it comes with, it's most likely going to get a driver update just like everything else, which will make the screen even better. And number 6, while we're on the topic of screen, having 120 Hz is another feature I can't wait to experience on a handheld. Thinking positively, while using my 144 Hz monitor at 120 FPS, the difference was night and day, and that level of precision makes every game feel much more realistic. So putting the graphics lower to raise the FPS will provide a noticeable difference in look and feel. There are a good amount of Steam Deck games that can go up to 120 Hz, by the way, like Resident Evil 5, Dead Space 2, Severed Steel, and Proteus, if the settings are right. There's no doubt that the Ally can hit those numbers as well, and most likely even higher, with a screen that can actually support those frames. And I think that's the big difference between the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, the 120 Hz screen, or it's just the difference that you're going to notice right away. Number 7 is the future support and features that ROG and Asus will add to this device. It's going to potentially make the ROG Ally similar to the Steam Deck in a lot of ways, with possibly a lot less limits, since the specs are more future-proof than the Steam Deck. And to me, this is a handheld console for someone who wants a backup Steam Deck, but also wants Windows installed on it and doesn't quite want to do a lot of the work with the drivers, the portrait mode screen, and incompatibility that the Steam Deck has with Windows naturally. But I think it's mainly for people that just want a Windows handheld. They don't want to get used to a new OS like Linux or SteamOS. They just want to pick it up, set up the games that they know and love, and play. It's also admittedly for the greedy, power-hungry fool that wants to push the handheld to its limits to the point that it'll explode. But that want of absolute power in a handheld is also supported by the need to be 200% immersed in a game while cranking the settings to turbo, and the resolution to 1080p and the FPS to 120 if you can. But since the system can support high wattages, I'm sure future support will make the device a lot more fluid. So number 8, the general build of the ROG Ally and its form factor make it slightly easier to take on the go, it seems. And honestly, if it comes to any size that's smaller than the Steam Deck, I'm all for it. I'm not against the grips that the Steam Deck has, but the trackpads do add some considerable length to the system, and taking it on the go is a bit ridiculous. Even though the battery can last up to 3 to 5 hours, the system does have room to be smaller, and the ROG Ally takes those advantages to the heart because the system is considerably smaller than the Steam Deck and lighter. So that makes it a little more appealing in terms of taking it on the go. And I'm sure the system isn't going to start perfect, maybe it might feel a little uncomfortable to me, but having that form factor and the specs inside of it, there are certainly big shoes to fill and even bigger promises. With the hardware in this smaller handheld, there's no doubt in a year's time, this handheld will go further than the Steam Deck will probably go in 5 years due to hardware limitations. It's just written in stone for a more powerful machine to be capable of more. And I'm sure the Steam Deck's trackpads make it a lot easier with strategy games. That is true. But having the comfort of having a slightly smaller handheld with more compatibility does even those odds a little more. And the support of the Steam Deck will hold strong until the hardware shows its limits. And after just a year, it's beginning to do just that, with games like Callisto Protocol not working quite well. And I was really looking forward to playing that one on the Steam Deck, but I'm holding off until I get an ROG Ally and until that system sees a little more support. And truthfully, the Steam Deck seemed underpowered for the generation it was aiming to tackle. The specs on the Ally just make more sense to be a modern gaming handheld. The only downside, of course, is Windows, but it will still be an exhilarating handheld to use. And it seems a lot of doubters out there, like the Fox, even though he says he's not a complete doubter of the ROG Ally, released a review recently and he only said positive things about it, especially the Windows aspect. And that shows a lot of potential. And the thing he seemed to like about it the most was the form factor. He couldn't stop talking about the analog sticks, the triggers, the buttons. Just the layout of the system is more comfortable than he originally thought it would be. And I'm excited to get this thing in my hands because it seems like it's using some kind of rare plastic as well. So I'm interested to see how the feel is going to grow on me. And number 9, strangely enough, is Armoury Crate. That software, even though during the first days of the reviews, seemed to give a lot of people issues with its glitches and the fact that it just stops working sometimes. And honestly, that's something I went through with the SteamOS as well. SteamOS isn't perfect, even to this day. Sometimes it freezes up on me, and for the first 8 months, it constantly froze up on me. And I was sending out a bunch of bug reports for almost everything, because that's just what you do when you support a system. I'm going to support the ROG Ally the same way. If it's not perfect, I'm not just going to go in my little Windows hate cave and say, oh, Windows never does anything right. I'm going to actually try to communicate with them and see if they can fix it. Because if there's anything a handheld could do very well, it's to take advantage of proprietary hardware and software to the point that it feels natural. And Armoury Crate will potentially make multitasking and accessing my favorite content, such as music, modding applications, and other third-party features that Windows will have full access to, a lot easier. Though the music feature hasn't been officially announced, I know they're going to add something like that. Just like with the old Xbox 360 days, you could just plug in your iPod or Zune and go straight to the media library and play an awesome song with an oldie like Halo 3 or 2008 Ninja Gaiden 2. And those were honestly the best times that I had with gaming, when I put my favorite song and just plugged my brain into this game. And even if the music feature isn't added for a while with Armoury Crate, I'm sure there are going to be plenty of third-party software that you can customize to work really well with the Ally. And you don't even have to know Linux in order to get these features. There's a ton of support for the Steam Deck, even with its difficult OS. And it's not difficult in a way that it's janky. It's just very tough to figure out sometimes. For Windows, a lot of those modders and hackers are going to do insane stuff with this handheld since it is easily accessible at Best Buy come June 13th. And again, I can't express how excited I am to just crank up my favorite song on Windows so there's nothing extra to figure out or work around while playing Ninja Gaiden 2 on Zinnia. That just gets me extremely stoked. And it's a shame that they removed that from the Xbox Game Pass, because that was something I was looking forward to playing on the Game Pass, but finding out they removed it a couple years back was a bit disheartening. But Xbox taketh away and the PC community giveth back. And the final reason I'm excited for the Ally is the fact that it's made to run Windows, while other OSs like SteamOS try to run Windows software, but always seems to fall short. And for me, trying to install even the most basic software just didn't work on SteamOS. It's just not strong enough to provide a completely stable experience for a lot of the games and Windows applications I see as essential.
This bores me. So weak!
The software, as of right now, just falls short. And to have a system that excels in Windows, and by some reviewers I've seen, has been called the most stable version of Windows yet, makes the Ally much more appealing to me. And sure, I had my gripes and PTSD with Windows, but that doesn't mean I lost all hope for the platform. I do believe pushing out positivity helps a company more than you know, and Asus and Windows, despite their missteps in recent years, still need that support to grow and learn, just like everybody else. But I do believe that we need to work together and support each other to make everything better. Either it be Windows, SteamOS, Linux, or Elon Musk. Sometimes the only thing you can do is believe in those people and those platforms and have faith that they will provide a stable experience eventually. That's why the SteamOS is as good as it is. If people were just to write it off from the beginning and the first 8 months, just like I see some YouTubers do where they just completely trash their Steam Deck and throw it away, just because it's not working correctly right now, doesn't mean that it's a lost cause. It just means that some people can be more impatient than others. And as a community, I believe that if we're as excited for this system like some people are and like I am, then yeah, it will ultimately become more successful and supported. But these were just my personal reasons for being excited about the ROG Ally. What are yours? And if you're still skeptical, let me know why in the comments. And thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have a good one. Later.